The first warning came not with a roar, but with a silence more absolute than any human had ever experienced. At 3:47 UTC, every satellite network, every communication grid, every electronic pulse that connected humanity suddenly went dark. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, lead astronomer at the Chilean Deep Space Monitoring Station, was the first to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. Her instruments registered a massive energy signature that defied every known physical law. Thousands of pinpricks of light, each larger than Earth's largest cities, began to materialize in low Earth orbit. The Zornak ships were nothing like human imagination had ever conceived. They were living machines, organic mechanical hybrids that pulsed with an alien intelligence that seemed to breathe with cold, calculated malevolence. The first wave of destruction was surgical. Precision-targeted electromagnetic pulses obliterated global communication infrastructures. Military installations across 6 continents were reduced to smoldering ruins within minutes. Major cities became graveyards of technology, their advanced defense systems rendered useless before they could even power up. In New York, Sarah Chen, a junior military communications specialist, watched in horror as the screens in her underground command center went from a complex web of global defense monitoring to absolute, terrifying black. The last transmission she heard was a garbled message from a Pacific Fleet destroyer. They're not even using weapons. They're just dissolving everything. Beijing disappeared first, not destroyed, but simply erased, as if an entire metropolis of 21 million people had been wiped from existence by a cosmic eraser. Tokyo followed minutes later, then Mumbai, London. Each city's destruction was accompanied by a strange, almost musical frequency that seemed to resonate with a pain beyond human comprehension. Military responses were futile. F-35 squadrons disintegrated mid-flight. Nuclear submarines found their systems completely paralyzed. The most advanced human technology became nothing more than expensive paperweights against the Zornak assault. Dr. Marcus Williams, a former DARPA researcher now working in a hidden research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, realized something the aliens didn't anticipate. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, but its ability to adapt when everything seemed lost. "They've made a fundamental mistake," he whispered to the ragtag group of survivors around him. Scientists, military personnel, engineers, and civilians, each representing a fragment of human potential. They believe they've broken us. But they don't understand what breaks us makes us stronger. In underground bunkers, in remote mountain research stations, in isolated islands, and deep-sea habitats, small pockets of humanity began to regroup. No centralized government remained. No traditional power structures survived. What emerged was something entirely new. A distributed network of human resistance that the Zornak could never have anticipated. A young hacker named Diego, barely 22, managed to capture a fragmentary transmission from the alien network. It was a message of supreme confidence, a declaration that translated roughly to planetary resource acquisition commencing. Minimal resistance expected. Estimated completion, 72 standard cycles. They didn't know humanity. They didn't understand that resistance was more than a military strategy. It was a fundamental characteristic of the human spirit. As the first day of the invasion ended, the world looked nothing like it had before. Billions were gone. Civilization as humanity knew it had been destroyed. But in hidden places in the hearts of those who remained, something was brewing. A response. A rebellion. A rebirth. The Zornak thought they had won. They were wrong. Humanity's true fight was just beginning. 72 hours after the initial assault, humanity's remnants began to breathe again. Dr. Marcus Williams sat in the command center of the Rocky Mountain Research Facility, surrounded by a mosaic of broken technology and desperate hope. To his left, Diego, the young hacker who had intercepted the alien transmission, was meticulously mapping out fragments of Zornak communication protocols. "It's not just a language," Diego muttered, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. It's a living network. These aren't just communication channels, they're neural pathways. Sarah Chen, who had survived the New York Command Center's destruction, leaned over the displays. Her military tactical training merged with Diego's digital intuition, creating a synergy the Zornak could never have predicted. "Look here," she pointed, "these frequency modulations. They're not just signals. They're commands, but commands with biological signatures." Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the room, carrying what appeared to be a heavily modified piece of alien technology. Recovered from the Chilean monitoring station's ruins, the device pulsed with an otherworldly blue-green light. "We're dealing with something beyond traditional technology," she explained. "The Zornak don't just use machines. Their entire technological infrastructure is a form of distributed intelligence. Their unlikely team had formed in the aftermath of destruction. Williams, the disgraced quantum physicist who had once been laughed out of multiple research institutions for his radical theories about consciousness and technology, now found himself at the center of humanity's survival effort. A retired Special Forces operative named Jack Reyes walked in, carrying a briefcase filled with salvaged alien components. His weathered hands, more accustomed to handling weapons than delicate electronics, carefully placed each piece on the analysis table. "Found these near what used to be a Zornak forward base in the Nevada desert," he said. "Looks like they weren't as careful about cleanup as they thought." Diego's eyes widened as he began interfacing with the recovered technology. Lines of impossible code began to resolve themselves on his screens. "Their communication isn't linear," he explained. "It's more like a living organism. Each transmission is both a message and an instruction, a command and a response." Dr. Williams recognized the breakthrough before anyone else. "They've created a technological ecosystem," he said, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound concern. "Not just a network, but a living, breathing system of communication and control." Sarah Chen's military mind immediately translated this into strategic potential. "If we can understand how it works, we might be able to disrupt it, to find a weakness." Hours turned into days of intense research. The team worked in shifts, each bringing their unique perspective to the alien technology. Elena's astronomical insights, Diego's digital intuition, Sarah's tactical analysis, Jack's field experience, and William's theoretical physics created a synergy that was quintessentially human. On the fifth day, something extraordinary happened. Diego managed to establish a partial interface with a fragment of the Zornak communication network. It wasn't just decoding. It was a momentary connection that revealed something shocking. The alien transmission carried an underlying pattern of fear. "They're not invincible," Diego whispered. "They're actually afraid of something." The room fell silent. For the first time since the invasion, a genuine smile crossed Dr. Williams' face. "They made one critical mistake," he said. "They underestimated humanity's capacity to adapt." Outside the mountain facility, the world remained in ruins, but inside, something was brewing. A response, a strategy. The first true weapon against a seemingly unstoppable enemy. Humanity's real resistance was about to begin. The Prometheus Protocol was born in silence, in a network of underground research facilities that spanned 3 continents. What began as a desperate attempt to understand alien technology transformed into humanity's most audacious scientific initiative. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display, her fingers tracing the intricate neural pathways they had mapped from the alien technology. "We're not just reverse engineering," she explained to the gathered researchers. "We're creating a completely new paradigm of technological understanding." The breakthrough came from an unexpected convergence of disciplines. Dr. Marcus Williams had developed a quantum entanglement communication model that could theoretically interface with the Zornak's living network. Diego's software algorithms created adaptive interfaces that could potentially penetrate alien systems. Jack Reyes contributed tactical insights that transformed theoretical science into practical warfare strategies. Their first major success was a quantum adaptive shield system. Unlike traditional defensive technologies, this new system didn't just block energy. It absorbed, analyzed, and could potentially redirect alien weapon signatures. Sarah Chen demonstrated the prototype, her hand steady as she guided a miniature energy projection through a series of impossible transformations. Traditional defense is about resistance, she explained. We're creating a technology that learns, adapts, and ultimately transforms the very nature of attack. In a hidden facility beneath the Andes Mountains, a team of geneticists and quantum physicists worked on something even more revolutionary. They were developing biomimetic interfaces that could potentially link human consciousness with adaptive technologies. It was more than an upgrade to human capabilities. It was an evolution. Dr. Akira Tanaka, a brilliant neuroengineer, explained the concept to a group of international researchers who had survived the initial invasion. The Zornak see technology as a tool. We're developing technology as an extension of human potential. Each system doesn't just respond. It learns, it grows, it becomes part of us. The global collaboration was unprecedented. National boundaries had dissolved in the face of extinction. Researchers from former rival nations now worked side by side, sharing every breakthrough, every fragment of understanding. Universities that had once competed now functioned as a single distributed intelligence network. Their first real-world test came unexpectedly. A small Zornak scout ship appeared in the upper atmosphere, likely conducting a routine survey of the planet's remnants. The old military would have attempted to shoot it down. The new human resistance had a different approach. Diego's adaptive communication algorithm found a way to interface with the ship's systems. Instead of a violent confrontation, they would infiltrate, learn, understand. The operation was led by Jack Reyes, with a small team of specially trained operatives. They used the new quantum adaptive shields to approach the ship undetected, their technology bending around the alien sensors like light through water. What they discovered inside the ship would change everything. The Zornak weren't just a technological civilization. They were a species driven by a profound fear. Their entire technological infrastructure was built as a defensive mechanism against something far more terrifying than humanity. They're running from something, Jack reported back to the research team. And whatever it is, it's got them more scared than we ever could. Dr. Williams looked at the data streaming in, a mix of scientific excitement and profound realization crossing his face. We're not just fighting a war, he said. We're uncovering a cosmic mystery. As the first successful infiltration of a Zornak vessel concluded, humanity had taken its first real step from survival to potential domination. The Prometheus Protocol was more than a scientific initiative. It was the first chapter of humanity's galactic rebirth. The art of psychological warfare had never been more critical than in the moment. Dr. Marcus Williams stood before the makeshift War Council. Survivors from every corner of the globe, military strategists, neuroscientists, cultural anthropologists, and tactical experts had gathered in the depths of the Rocky Mountain facility. The Zornak think in linear patterns, Williams explained, his holographic display flickering with captured alien communication logs. Their entire civilization is built on predictive algorithms and strategic certainty. Our greatest weapon is our fundamental unpredictability. Sarah Chen, now leading the tactical integration team, brought up a series of complex simulations. Each scenario demonstrated how human irrationality could become a strategic advantage. Where alien tactics relied on mathematical precision, human responses defied logical prediction. Diego had been working on something extraordinary. By analyzing the fragments of Zornak communication networks, he'd developed an adaptive algorithm that could introduce controlled chaos into their systems. It's not about breaking their communication, he explained. It's about making it unreliable. Imagine sending signals that are simultaneously true and false, that exist in multiple states of meaning. The first major psychological operation targeted a Zornak forward deployment hub in what was once the Australian outback. Jack Rice led a small team of operatives who looked nothing like traditional soldiers. They were a mix of hackers, linguists, psychological warfare experts, and adaptive technology specialists. Their approach was unlike any military strategy in human history. Instead of direct confrontation, they would undermine the aliens' fundamental understanding of reality. The operation began with a series of impossible communications, messages that contradicted themselves, strategic information that was simultaneously accurate and completely false, audio transmissions that carried multiple layers of meaning, each interpreted differently by the aliens' predictive algorithms. Within hours, the Zornak command structure began to show signs of internal confusion. Their hyperlogical systems couldn't process the quantum uncertainty of human communication. It was as if they were encountering a form of intelligence that fundamentally broke their understanding of strategic engagement. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had discovered something even more profound during their research. The Zornak weren't just a technological civilization. They were a species driven by a collective consciousness that valued absolute certainty. Every decision, every strategy was built on predictive models that assumed complete information. Humanity's greatest strength was its ability to thrive in uncertainty. A critical moment came when a small human strike team managed to infiltrate a massive Zornak command ship. Led by Jack Rice, the team wasn't there to destroy, but to introduce pure, unadulterated human chaos. They deployed a series of quantum adaptive communication devices developed by Diego. These weren't weapons in the traditional sense. They were cognitive disruptors that introduced layers of meaning, uncertainty, and psychological complexity that the alien systems couldn't process. The results were immediate and shocking. Zornak ships began to show signs of internal conflict. Communication networks fragmented. Strategic deployments became erratic. "We're not fighting them," Williams said, watching the real-time data. "We're making them fight themselves." By introducing elements of human creativity, emotional complexity, and strategic unpredictability, they were doing something the Zornak had never encountered. They were turning the aliens' greatest strength, their logical, predictive intelligence, into a fundamental weakness. As the first phase of psychological warfare concluded, the human resistance realized they were no longer just fighting for survival. They were rewriting the very rules of galactic conflict. The Zornak had made a critical mistake. They thought they were fighting a war. Humanity knew they were fighting for something far more profound, the right to define their own existence. The turning point came not with a single moment of triumph, but with a gradual transformation that shocked the entire galactic hierarchy. Humanity's counteroffensive began in the most unexpected way possible, not as a military campaign, but as a complex, multidimensional strategy of liberation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic map that now stretched beyond Earth, showing the intricate web of alien civilizations under Zornak control. "We're not just fighting a war," she explained to the assembled strategists. "We're conducting a systemic liberation." The breakthrough in faster-than-light communication came from an unlikely collaboration. Diego's quantum communication algorithms, combined with Dr. Marcus Williams' theoretical physics and Jack Rice's tactical insights, had created a communication network that defied everything known about interstellar transmission. Their first contact was with the Vexnar, a species that had been under Zornak subjugation for over 3 generations. The transmission was more than a message. It was a complex cognitive key that bypassed traditional communication barriers. Sarah Chen led the diplomatic initiative. Unlike traditional diplomatic approaches, their strategy was radical. They didn't offer alliance. They offered a method of liberation. The Vexnar response was initially cautious. Centuries of oppression had taught them to mistrust any form of hope. But the human transmission carried something unprecedented, a blueprint for technological and psychological independence. Within weeks, the first liberated Vexnar fleet joined human operations. They were followed by the Kreltheri, another subjugated species that had long believed resistance was impossible. Each liberated civilization brought unique technologies, strategic insights, and a burning desire for freedom. Jack Reyes oversaw the first joint military operations. The coalition was unlike any military force in galactic history. Human adaptive technologies merged with Vexenar quantum navigation systems. Krell stealth technologies combined with human psychological warfare strategies. The Zornak had built their empire on a fundamental assumption that their subject species were fundamentally incapable of resistance. Humanity proved this assumption catastrophically wrong. Dr. Williams discovered something profound in the captured Zornak communication networks. The alien civilization was not a monolithic entity, but a complex system held together by fear and precise control. Each liberated species created fractures in their infrastructure. Diego's most significant breakthrough came with a revolutionary communication protocol. It wasn't just a method of transmission. It was a cognitive key that could unlock the psychological constraints placed on subjugated civilizations. "We're not just sending messages," Diego explained. "We're sending hope. We're sending the very concept of freedom." The coalition grew rapidly. What had started as a human resistance became a galactic liberation movement. Each liberated species brought its own unique perspective, its own technological innovations. A critical moment came when they intercepted a high-level Zornak strategic communication. The aliens were beginning to realize that humanity was more than just another species to be conquered. They were a fundamental threat to the entire galactic power structure. Sarah Chen analyzed the intercepted communication with a mix of scientific precision and strategic insight. "They're afraid," she said, "not just of us, but of what we represent." As the first year of the counteroffensive concluded, the galactic map had transformed. What was once a rigid hierarchy of Zornak control now showed a complex, dynamic network of emerging free civilizations. Humanity had done more than fight a war. They had started a revolution that would reshape the entire galactic understanding of freedom, potential, and collective evolution. The turning tide was more than a military campaign. It was the birth of a new galactic order. The technological singularity was not a moment, but a process, a radical transformation that redefined the very essence of human potential. In a hidden research complex deep beneath the Andes Mountains, Dr. Marcus Williams watched as the boundaries between biological and technological consciousness began to blur. The breakthrough came from an unexpected convergence of disciplines. Neuroengineer Dr. Akira Tanaka had developed a quantum neural interface that was more than just a technological achievement. It was a bridge between human consciousness and the vast informational networks they had been developing. Diego's adaptive AI systems had evolved beyond any previous understanding of artificial intelligence. They were no longer tools, but collaborative entities that worked in perfect symbiosis with human creativity. Each algorithm was a living, learning system that grew more complex with every interaction. Sarah Chen demonstrated the first full-scale consciousness integration prototype. Unlike previous neural interfaces, this system didn't just read brain signals. It created a true two-way dialogue between human consciousness and technological networks. Participants could experience multiple perspectives simultaneously, process information at quantum speeds, and interact with complex systems in ways that defied traditional understanding. "We're not upgrading humans," Dr. Williams explained to the International Research Council. "We're expanding the very definition of human consciousness." The liberated alien technologies played a crucial role. The Vexenar quantum entanglement communication systems merged with human adaptive algorithms. Krell biomimetic technologies provided insights into consciousness that human researchers had never imagined possible. Jack Reyes, once a Special Forces operative, now led the practical implementation of these technologies. The first test subjects were volunteers from diverse backgrounds: scientists, artists, former military personnel, survivors of the initial Zornak invasion. Each participant became a living experiment in human potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered something extraordinary during the early tests. The new consciousness interfaces didn't just enhance human capabilities. They created a form of collective intelligence that was fundamentally different from anything in known galactic history. test subjects could share experiences, solve complex problems, and create innovative solutions in ways that seemed almost supernatural. A mathematician in Tokyo could instantly collaborate with an engineer in Sao Paulo, their consciousness merging to solve challenges that would have taken years using traditional methods. The Zornak monitoring systems began to detect something they couldn't comprehend. Humanity was no longer developing technology. They were becoming something entirely new. Diego's most significant breakthrough was an adaptive learning system that could predict and resolve complex challenges before they fully manifested. It wasn't just artificial intelligence. It was a form of predictive consciousness that could navigate multiple potential futures simultaneously. Dr. Tanaka explained the profound implications. "We're creating a form of intelligence that doesn't just process information," he said. "We're creating a living network of consciousness that can adapt, learn, and evolve in real time." The first large-scale demonstration came during a simulated conflict scenario, where previous human and alien systems would take hours to analyze potential strategies. The new integrated consciousness could generate millions of potential solutions in milliseconds, selecting the most optimal path with unprecedented precision. Humanity was transforming. No longer confined to individual biological limitations, they were becoming a distributed, adaptive intelligence that could exist simultaneously across multiple platforms and perspectives. Dr. Williams watched the data streams, a mixture of scientific excitement and philosophical wonder crossing his face. "We're not just developing technology," he whispered. "We're redefining the very nature of intelligence." The technological singularity was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was the moment humanity transcended its previous limitations and became something entirely new, a living, adaptive, collective consciousness that would reshape the understanding of life itself. The final confrontation was not a single battle, but a multi-dimensional conflict that would reshape the entire galactic order. The combined human-alien coalition assembled a fleet that defied every previous understanding of warfare, stretching across multiple star systems. Dr. Marcus Williams stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, the flagship of the human-led liberation fleet. Around him, a command team that represented the pinnacle of galactic cooperation. Sarah Chen coordinating tactical operations, Diego managing the quantum communication networks, Jack Rice overseeing strategic deployments, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez analyzing the complex mathematical models of potential engagement scenarios. The Zornak had marshaled their entire remaining force, a massive armada that represented centuries of technological dominance. Their ships were living machines, each a complex organism designed for absolute control and precise destruction. But they had never encountered an enemy like humanity. The first wave of engagement defied all traditional combat strategies. Instead of direct confrontation, the human-led coalition employed a multi-layered approach that was part psychological warfare, part technological infiltration, and part quantum manipulation. Diego's adaptive communication systems began to work their magic. Quantum entanglement communication protocols created a network of information that existed simultaneously across multiple states. Zornak ship systems found themselves bombarded with information that was simultaneously true and false, real and unreal. Jack Rice led the first strike teams, enhanced humans with consciousness-integrated technologies that allowed them to process information and react at speeds that made traditional combat look like slow motion. They moved through the battlefield like living algorithms, predicting and countering alien strategies before they could even be fully conceived. The Vexinar quantum navigation systems merged with human adaptive technologies, creating attack vectors that seemed to bend the very fabric of spacetime. Krelthari stealth technologies made entire sections of the human-alien fleet virtually undetectable, striking with precision that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's predictive models showed something extraordinary. The Zornak weren't just losing. They were experiencing a fundamental breakdown of their collective consciousness. Each liberated species they had once controlled was now a weapon turned against them. Sarah Chen coordinated the most complex military operation in galactic history. It wasn't just about defeating the Zornak. It was about dismantling an entire system of galactic control that had existed for millennia. The critical moment came when the Prometheus entered the heart of the Zornak command structure. Dr. Williams had discovered something profound in their captured communication networks. The alien civilization was held together by a central consciousness that could be disrupted. "We're not just fighting," Williams explained to the bridge crew. "We're performing a form of technological exorcism." Diego's most brilliant innovation came into play: a quantum communication protocol that could simultaneously exist across multiple planes of consciousness. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a cognitive key designed to unlock the psychological constraints of the Zornak control system. The battle lasted what seemed like both an instant and an eternity. Space itself seemed to twist and bend around the conflict. Entire star systems became battlegrounds of consciousness, with technologies that blurred the lines between physical conflict and psychological warfare. As the final moments approached, the human-led coalition realized they were doing more than winning a war. They were rewriting the fundamental understanding of conflict, consciousness, and potential. The Zornak command structure began to collapse, not through destruction, but through a complete unraveling of their collective consciousness. Their systems of control, built over millennia, dissolved like mist in sunlight. Dr. Williams watched the final moments of the conflict, a mixture of scientific wonder and profound understanding crossing his face. Humanity had done more than defeat an enemy. They had liberated an entire galactic ecosystem from a system of control that had existed for millennia. The final confrontation was over, but humanity's true journey was just beginning. The aftermath of the great conflict was not silence, but a symphony of possibility. Dr. Marcus Williams stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching as entire star systems began to heal themselves, liberated from millennia of oppressive control. The galactic reconstruction was unlike any previous period of renewal. Humanity had not conquered. They had transformed. The coalition of liberated species worked together, each bringing their unique perspective to the process of rebuilding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the first galactic collaborative research initiative. Scientists from over 60 different species worked side by side, their consciousness-integrated technologies allowing for unprecedented levels of cooperation. Barriers of language, biology, and perspective dissolved in the face of collective potential. Diego, now more of a living network than a traditional individual, managed the vast communication systems that connected liberated civilizations. His adaptive intelligence had become a bridge between diverse consciousness systems, facilitating understanding that went beyond traditional communication. Sarah Chen oversaw the political restructuring. The old hierarchical systems of galactic governance were replaced by a dynamic, fluid network of cooperation. Each species contributed its unique strengths, with humanity serving not as a dominant force, but as a catalyst for collective evolution. Jack Rays led the initial peacekeeping efforts, but these were not military operations in the traditional sense. They were complex social integration programs that helped species heal from generations of oppression, teaching them to collaborate rather than compete. The technological breakthroughs were staggering. The quantum consciousness interfaces developed during the conflict now became tools of healing and understanding. Species that had been isolated for millennia could now share experiences, memories, and perspectives with unprecedented depth and clarity. Dr. Akira Tanaka's research revealed something profound. The consciousness integration technologies were not just tools of communication. They were creating a new form of collective intelligence that transcended individual species' limitations. Entire planetary ecosystems began to be restored. The Vexenar environmental restoration technologies merged with human adaptive systems, creating methods of planetary healing that seemed almost magical. Worlds that had been stripped of resources for millennia began to bloom with new life. The first Galactic Council was unlike any previous governmental structure. Representatives didn't just represent their species, they were living embodiments of collective consciousness, able to simultaneously process multiple perspectives and find solutions that benefited the entire ecosystem. Dr. Williams reflected on the journey. Humanity had entered the conflict as a nearly extinct species, fighting for survival. They emerged as something entirely different, a catalyst for galactic transformation. The psychological impact was equally significant. Species that had been locked in conflict for generations began to understand each other in ways never before possible. The quantum communication networks allowed for a level of empathy that went beyond traditional understanding. Sarah Chen described it best during the first Galactic Reconstruction Summit. "We didn't win a war," she explained. "We discovered a new way of existing, a method of cooperation that sees diversity as strength, conflict as an opportunity for understanding." Diego's consciousness network generated a visual representation of the new galactic structure. It was not a hierarchy, but a complex, living network of interconnected potential. Each species, each civilization was a node of possibility, connected by threads of shared understanding. As the first decade of Reconstruction concluded, humanity realized they had done more than liberate the galaxy. They had introduced a new way of understanding existence itself. Dr. Marcus Williams looked out at the stars, a smile crossing his face. The journey that had begun with near extinction had transformed into something far more profound. Humanity had not conquered the stars. They had learned to dance with them.